Let's talk about one of the most controversial art techniques out there, tracing. There are as many reasons out there for why someone might support tracing or not support tracing, as there are people out there who do or don't like the concept and the technique of tracing. One of the issues that people take with tracing is that they feel like you are cheating as an artist when you do trace your own work or someone else's work. They feel that you're not actually building the skills needed to draw or paint from observation, and depending on what you're tracing, you could be infringing on someone else's copyright. A few reasons someone might support this technique is because it can actually speed up the process of your underdrawing if you are tracing another drawing, and it can also give you a better perspective on foreshortening or general landscapes. For some reason, a lot of the general public think that this idea of tracing is a newer concept, but people have been using tracing paper, charcoal tracings, projectors, light boxes, and other older devices to trace underdrawings for years and years, dating back to the Renaissance and further. It's also theorized that many of the old master painters that we look up to did use this kind of technique, using something called a camera obscura. 3 of the old masters that are theorized to have used this technique are Caravaggio, Rembrandt, and Johannes Vermeer, who created the famous Girl with a Pearl Earring painting. And tracing your own work, your own paintings, drawings, photos, is a lot less stigmatized than if you traced someone else's work, and for good reason. Copyright infringement is something that happens way too often and probably isn't talked about enough within the art world. When you make a painting, drawing, sculpture, or take a photo, you automatically copyright your work. You don't have to file any paper for it. It is already copyrighted because you created it. It is possible to trace someone else's work and create your own painting or drawing based off of that, or to do a study of someone else's work and make an almost identical copy. However, there are some rules that you need to know if you're going to do this. Doing this is much more popular with old master paintings done by Van Gogh or Da Vinci or whoever else, because those are most often in common use or under the public domain, meaning that the original artist has already passed away. It has been at least 70 years since they died, so the copyright is open to the public for use. Most artwork created in recent years by artists that are still living do not fall under common use or the public domain. Most of those artists still have the copyright for their artwork, or they sold the rights for their art to a company that now owns the copyright to it. So what do you do if you see this painting or this picture that somebody took and you really want to use it as a reference photo to trace over or to paint? Well, the first thing that you would need to do is actually ask the artist or the company if you are able to use that as your reference. If they say yes, then you have the green light to go ahead and make what you want to make. If they say no, you cannot make that without infringing on copyright. There is also the option of buying a copyright license. This is usually where you would pay the person or the company for the rights to use their work in your own work. Whether an artist will give you the okay to just use their photo as a reference, or if they want you to buy a copyright license, is completely dependent on the artist. And there are many artists out there that also just will not let there be any reproduction or copies of their own artwork. However, I found in my experience, most artists will say yes as long as you just ask and make sure that you credit them if you end up posting it anywhere. Is it possible to use someone's painting or photo as a reference image and change it so much that you don't actually need to ask for permission or buy a copyright license to use their work as a reference? This gets complicated because the answer is yes, but also no. When I was in high school and we were taking artworks to competitions, we were told that you can take something as a reference that you found on Google, but it needs to be transformative in your work. Very similar to the way that commentary channels have to use different videos and things from different channels. and turn it into something new in order to not infringe on copyright. That being said, you cannot just take an image and immediately copy it exactly, paint it exactly, and then change the style of it a little bit so that it looks like your painting and not as much their picture. That will not work. But you can take portions of that picture or that artwork and incorporate it into your own piece. If you plan on making some sort of wild, surreal portrait piece, you can take a picture of a celebrity and alter it so that it looks nothing similar to the original photograph, and in that way it'll be transformative and be your own work. Think of it as creating a collage with your reference photos and then painting a picture of that collage or drawing that collage. You are able to take pieces of other references and create something new with it, but it does need to be different than it was. So as I was saying, back when I was in high school and I was doing art competitions, we were told that we could use Google references for our own reference for our paintings and artwork, but we did need to change them. The rule of thumb that we had to follow was that the painting had to be 80% different than our reference. We could include a little portion of our reference, but we could not have something that was the exact same. So in doing that, we had to either change the shape of things, the color, the texture, the context of the reference, and after doing that, we would have something completely new and different than the photo we were referencing. When I cannot get in contact with the original copyright owner of a picture that I want to use the reference for, I follow that rule of splicing things together or changing 80% of the painting so that it looks very different. I usually try and take that reference photo into Procreate and I trace the parts of it that I want after I have flipped the orientation. So I normally flip it to the opposite of what it was. I trace just the bits that I want or the general scape of it all because I do a lot of landscapes. And after that, I don't use the reference photo anymore for anything other than the outline. I go in and add my own colors, my own textures. As you'll see, it looks pretty different, my painting versus the original, because the trees are different, the mountain shape is different, the colors are also different. I try to make it as unique to my style as possible because I'm really just looking at the reference for maybe looking at the lighting or the shadows or just the spacing between certain aspects of the ground. When it comes to practicing someone else's art style or making studies of their work for someone that you are not asking permission to use their work, it's not as much of a big deal if you are just doing it in your own personal sketchbook and you're not going to be showing anyone. Maybe you show a few friends, but you don't post about it and it's not really seen and you are not saying that it is your work and that you came up with the design. That's not really a big a deal. The big deal happens whenever you start posting that on social media and you become misleading with who actually created the work. Yes, you did draw it. Yes, you did trace it. However, you did not come up with the original design, and that's where we get into copyright infringement and plagiarism. So with all that said, tracing in and of itself is not a bad thing. It can actually be a very helpful tool to help you learn perspective and foreshortening. And it can also speed up the process of your underdrawing so that you can get on to the painting portion or shading. But you do need to be mindful if you are tracing someone else's work. You need to either get their permission, buy a copyright license, or use their work in such a way that it is transformative and it is not going to be their work anymore. It is going to be 100% your work. When in doubt, look for copyright-free images. I'll leave some links below to some copyright-free image websites. I hope that this video helped and that you have a good week. I will see you next time. Bye.